Flesh and steel land upon the dirt with a weighty thud. The soul drifts away, observing the body as blood quickly drains through the abnormal wound granted by an axe-wielding orc. Soldier after soldier falls as the horde rushes through a wave of blood and pain. The captain of the forward troop was the last to fall, taken off his horse by a well-thrown axe. As the orc retrieves his instrument and turns to rejoin the assault, hairs rise on the nape of his neck. He turns to find the corpse of the captain standing upright, emotionless, lifeless. As the creature tore down his reanimated foe, another of the guards was raised, and another, and another. The corpses were rising, surrounding, attacking. He swung wildly, but was no match for the necrotic forces at play. As he laid his eyes upon the horde, not a great distance away, he watched in horror as his kin fell to a similar fate. Before the life left his eyes, the orc beheld his tormentor, a figure wrapped in flesh and bone, carrying a ritual knife, simply glancing down as she headed toward the next victim. Welcome back, adventurers. The day is here. We have a new book, and not just any book. We have Impossible Magic. What does that mean? It means we've got remastered versions of the Magus and the Summoner. We have new subclasses for classes like the Wizard. We've got spells, we've got magic items, and most importantly, we have two new classes, one of which I'm talking about today, the Necromancer. Driving magic through the border of life and death, necromancers raise the corpses of the deceased to drive their enemies back. Necromancers are full casters who use intelligence as their primary ability score. They get 8 hit points per level. They are proficient in simple weapons and light armor by default, and they have access to some other benefits we'll see later. You can possibly get martial weapons, and you can get some medium armor, but for a full caster, not a bad place to start. In many ways, we've landed kind of like a druid would. You were also trained in perception, will, and reflex, but expert in fortitude saves right away. This is different for a caster, where usually we see expert in will saves. Fortitude is very fitting here. You get trained in occultism and 2 plus int mod skills. So again, your base attribute here is intelligence, making you strong at recall knowledge, especially lore-based knowledges. You get potential skill monkey access here, where you can kind of dive around and grab all sorts of things. And there's just a ton of classes you can archetype with if you want to go class archetypes. The Necromancer has a bunch of key level 1 features and terms for us to talk about. There's so much to cover. And we have, well, one thing above level 1 that I think is unusual enough that we need to cover it as well. That being said, let's go ahead and dive into what makes them really unique and start off with the most interesting here, thralls. What is a thrall? A thrall is an undead creature that you raise, but it's not a minion. And it's not summoned. None of those traits exist here. It's a corpse that you raise from the ground in its spot. They don't get actions by default, but they can be used in many ways, including commanded to do various actions. They are small or medium in size. And when you raise them in an open space, and there's all sorts of details on exactly where you can raise them and how you go about it with different ways to raise them, but they're going to be raised up in an empty location. Creatures can move through it, but it's difficult terrain to walk into their space. However, what happens is that your thrall is simply shunted out of the space into a new space that is unoccupied adjacent to the space it was previously in. So it won't fully block any paths, but it will slow creatures down. Thralls last for 1 minute. They can be used for flanking purposes, which is cool. They have 1 hit point. Any attack made at them automatically hits. Any save they make, they automatically fail. Their speed is 15 feet. They are immune to bleed, disease, death, mental, and poison effects. If you have to worry about their level, they are level -1, in case that matters. And then anything that creates thralls will have the thrall trait. Now, if you do have a thrall, you can use one action to command a thrall. You're going to choose a thrall, and you're going to tell that thrall to crawl, drop prone, escape, interact, stand, stride, or strike. Interact actions can only be simple, nothing that requires a skill. So I'm not going to like pick a lock, but they can pull a lever. Using your spell attack modifier, by the way, for their strike, which means they have a good chance to hit. And if they have to escape, you still use it for that as well. Either of those strikes and escapes do count toward the Necromancer's multiple attack penalty. Strikes deal 1d6, either bludgeoning, slashing, or piercing. You get to choose there. And it increases by a d6 every 4 levels. So at level 1, and then at level 5, 9, so forth, and so on. So that's thralls. We needed to understand that because so much of what we're going to talk about built on that. But not really the next thing, which of course is your spell casting. You are a prepared caster. The spell table is on screen here. As you can see, at most you ever get 2 spell slots per rank. So you're just like a psychic. You start with 1, then you're second, and you have 2 at every rank. You do get 5 cantrips to start out. You don't prepare from your whole spell list each day, but you have what is essentially a spell book called your dirge. So while this is basically like an internal spell book, it's like, you don't have a physical thing. It's an internal thing. You start with 8 cantrips in there, 5 of which you're going to prepare, and 5 first rank spells, but one of those is always harm. So you're getting harm and 4 others. Nice thing here, harm, well, that's not on the occult list, and you are an occult caster. You're getting 1 divine spell for free. And it's very thematic, and it's pretty cool that you have it here. Then every time you level up, you're going to add 2 spells to your dirge of a rank that you can cast. So once you're level 3, you can add first or second rank spells. And then, of course, you can add more spells to your dirge with the learn a spell downtime activity, just like you would a spell book. I think it's probably a good call. Add spells when you can. Oh, and of course, again, really want to make the point here. You are an occult spellcaster, but you're a necromancer. So I'm assuming you guessed that. Although I could certainly see why you might think you were divine. You are occult. Then we have grave spells. These are your focus spells. You're going to get a focus point back for 10 minutes of meditating, like usual, but you're meditating on life and death and speaking with the dead, things like that. If you have a thrall up when you start refocusing, so remember they last a minute, you've got one there. I'm going to start refocusing. It's still there. Instead of getting 1 focus point back, you get 2, which is huge. You get 2 focus spells at level 1, and therefore you have 2 focus points at level 1. Your 2 focus spells are Necrotic Bomb, and you get a special one from your subclass called your Grim Fascination. The one that you get here that everybody gets, Necrotic Bomb, this is 2 actions, has a range of 30 feet. You target 1 thrall in that 30 feet, and then there's going to be a basic fortitude save for other creatures. You're going to basically blow that thrall up. It's going to explode. All creatures in a 10-foot emanation take 1d12 void damage with a basic fortitude save, and heighten +1, add another d12 of damage. That's pretty solid damage, and probably not very hard to pull this off. So I think you start with a pretty decent AoE spell, which is cool. So aside from the general grave spells, we have grave cantrips. You've got to start with 2 of these also at level 1, Create Thrall and Thrall Charge. Create Thrall is 1 action, has a range of 30 feet, and then what you create is for 1 minute because you're going to create 2 thralls. Or you can create 1 thrall and immediately command that thrall. So you don't have to spend a second action to command it. You create it and then command it all for the 1 action. Or you can just create 2. And trust me, there's times to use both of those. And then your other grave cantrip is Thrall Charge. This is 2 actions, also has a range of 30 feet, and you're targeting 1 thrall with this one. You're going to command the thrall to stride, then strike. And this time, the strike, if it hits, will deal an additional d6 damage on top of the general damage that a thrall would normally do. You can destroy it after the strike, if it hits, to add a bonus, status bonus that is, to the damage equal to the spell's rank. This spell heightens at 2nd, 6th, and 10th rank. Each time it heightens, you're going to add another d6 of damage. So at 2nd rank, you're doing 2d6 extra damage, and then 3d6, and then 4d6. And keep in mind that, of course, your Thrall's natural damage is going up, so you end up with some decent damage from your Thrall hits for using Thrall Charge. Next up on our list of features is something that's new from the playtest. And we've already talked about things, by the way, that have changed in the playtest. I just got to put this out there. The playtest Necromancer to this Necromancer, these are not the same class. Like, the bones are kind of there, but different flesh is wrapped around them. Yes, I'm going to pretend that was on theme. Anyway, we have Fatal Method. This is a choice you're going to make between 2 options at level 1. It's basically kind of choosing between being a full caster and a Gish. kind of. So you're going to get a basic upgrade that varies, and then you're going to create thrall upgrade. So it changes the way create thrall works for you, and you're going to get access, meaning these act as prereqs for level 6 and level 16 feats, which I won't talk about here. First, we have Puppeteer. So for you, you're going to gain Consume Thrall. This is a free action, used once per day, targeting one of your thralls, and you can only use it if you have no focus points left. Then you destroy that thrall, and you gain a focus point back that can only be used for grave spells. Then you also get Thrall Proliferation. Once per round, when you cast Create Thrall, again, we just talked about that. You either make 2 or make 1 and then have it go attack. You get 1 additional Thrall in range. So either you're going to create 3 Thralls and not do anything with them right away, or you're going to create 2 and still have 1 go out and attack something or move or whatever. The other option here is Reaper. You get Reaper's Edge. This is This makes you trained in martial weapons and medium armor. So this is your tankier martial version, and you become expert in martial weapons at level 11 and medium armor at level 13. Where normally you'd only go up to expert in basic and light armor. Basic weapons and light armor. Simple weapons, light armor. That's what I mean. Yes, we got there. Then the other bonus you get is Thrall Teamwork. Once per turn, when you cast Create Thrall, you can make a melee strike against a creature in melee reach of you as a free action. Has to be adjacent to at least 1 Thrall. So you're raising Thralls, raise 1 on the other side, then you make a strike. Well, guess what? Because you raised a Thrall, you could raise it to flank with you. Now you've got a flanking partner. Boom, they're off guard to this strike, and it's a free action strike. That's pretty cool. So that's one of the choices you have to make with your class at level 1. How about the other one? The other one is your Grim Fascination. This is your general subclass. What it gives you is a Grave spell at level 1. You're going to get a Thrall enhancement at level 1. And this acts as a prereq for a level 12 feat that is available to you. We will get into those after I get through all of the features like usual, so we will talk about all of our subclasses. Next feature on the list, because boy, we just keep going, is Mastery of Life and Death. Anytime you cast a spell that deals void or vitality damage, keep in mind, we already talked about that deals void damage, you can choose which type it deals. So that void damage could do vitality damage if you want it to. If you hit a group of creatures, it affects them all like that, right? So you've raised a thrall in the middle of some undead, boom, vitality damage explosion. That can be awesome. This cannot make something heal that otherwise wouldn't. So this doesn't turn your harm into heal to heal allies just because you changed it to vitality damage. It would just do vitality, and that doesn't heal by default. Just vitality, so it won't hurt them. And our final feature at level 1 is Undead Lore. This is something that you are trained at for free at level 1. So it's a special lore. You can only use it to recall knowledge about undead, haunts, or effects of undead, or necromancers. So it's all undead related. Only undead related things here. But still, that's a lot of stuff in many games. This also auto heightens for you at levels 3, 7, and 15, much like we see lores in other classes. Now, as far as higher level features, it's pretty much what you'd expect about, different saves increasing, different proficiency levels, all that. Pretty standard stuff. I will note that we will become legendary in fortitude saves, which is pretty unique for a caster. I think it's entirely unique for a caster, so that's kind of cool. But at 3rd level, we get Inevitable Return. This is a reaction, and it's triggered when a small or medium enemy dies within 30 feet of you. You can use this to raise a thrall that lasts for 1 minute in that space, and it's the same size as the creature that died. This is one of the few things I think they got a debuff from the playtest where it didn't used to care about small or medium, I don't think. But in any case, that's still a lot of what you fight, at least at lower levels. At higher levels, it's probably a bigger issue, but you can bring about your own thralls pretty well. Okay, we finally got through all of our features. Lots of features. Let's talk subclasses. We have 4 Grim Fascinations. Quick reminder, this gives you a Grave spell, a Thrall enhancement, and is a prereq for a level 12 feat, and I will talk about those feats here. First one up is Blood. Your Grave spell is Blood Infusion. This is 2 actions, has a range of 30 feet. You're going to target 1 Thrall, then it's going to last for a minute, and there's a Fortitude save involved. So you target your Thrall, and then a creature in 15 feet of that Thrall fills with blood and must make a Fortitude save. On a crit success, nothing happens. On a success, That creature loses immunity to bleed if it had any, and is considered to have blood for effects that need that, then takes 1 persistent bleed damage. On a failure, same as success, only 26 persistent bleed damage, and crit fail is 2d6 persistent bleed damage. Heighten +1 is going to add 1 bleed, 1d6 bleed, or 2d6 bleed, respectively, to the different levels of success. Your Thrall Enhancement, which you also get at level 1, whenever one of your thralls is destroyed, you regain 1 hit point. And this increases by 1 every 4 levels. This is with every thrall that is destroyed. So that can be a lot. The level 12 feat you have access to is Sanguine Mastery. You get resistance to bleed damage equal to half your level. If an enemy in 30 feet is bleeding, you gain fast healing equal to half your level. Keep in mind, at this point, that is 6 fast healing. This isn't active if you have the dying condition, though. When you destroy a thrall, a creature adjacent takes 1 persistent bleed damage or adds 1 if they already have bleed damage going, so it'll just build on top. Can only be a creature can only be affected by that, however, once per round. So a lot of bleed going on here. A lot of benefits for you when people are bleeding. Then we have Bone. Your grave spell is Bone Spear. And this is 2 actions, 30-foot range, targeting 1 thrall, and there's going to be a basic reflex save involved. You're going to destroy 1 thrall. Then each creature in a 15-foot line from the thrall that you make, so you decide where the line's going, has to make a basic reflex save against 2d6 piercing damage. Heighten +1 adds another 2d6 damage. The Thrall Enhancement. The speed of your thralls increases by 5 feet, so now they have 20-foot movement speed. And your level 12 feat is Reinforced Skeleton. You gain resistance to 2 damage types. One has to be either cold, electricity, or fire. The other is either slashing or piercing. And the amount is half your level, just like we saw before. You also gain a 5-foot status bonus to your speeds at all times. And whenever you destroy a thrall, this is a 10-foot bonus for 1 round. You can move. Then we have Flesh. You get the spell Dead Weight. This is 2 actions, 30-foot range, targeting a thrall. There's going to be a fortitude save, and it lasts for a round. So the thrall tosses itself at a creature in 15 feet of it. The thrall is then destroyed, but the target has to make a fortitude save. Crit success, nothing happens. Success, the creature is now off guard for that round. On a fail, they are slowed 1 and off guard for a round. And on a crit fail, they are slowed 2 and off guard for a round. Your Thrall Enhancement. Whenever one of your thralls is destroyed, you can choose to leave behind difficult terrain in its space that lasts for 10 minutes. And you have the level 12 feat Thick Skin. Increases your hit points by your level, so you're getting a little bit of a boost on health. When you destroy a thrall, this is only once per round, but when you destroy a thrall for the first time, I should say, on a round, each adjacent creature to you, the Necromancer, must succeed at a fortitude save against your spell DC, or become sickened 1. And finally, we have Spirit. You get the Grave Spell Life Tap. This is 2 actions, 30-foot range, target 1 thrall, we're seeing a pattern. Fortitude save involved, we're seeing a pattern. Choose a thrall in range. Choose 1 creature in 30 feet of that thrall to make a fortitude save. Then the thrall is going to be destroyed. Crit success, nothing happens. On a success, the creature becomes drained 1 for 1 minute. You or an ally within 30 feet gets healed a number of hit points equal to double the health lost due to drain. A creature can only be healed once every 10 minutes by this effect. On a fail, same thing, but drained 2, and on a crit fail, same, but drained 3, which could be a ridiculous number of hit points, because this scales, of course, with the creature level more than anything. Your Thrall Enhancement. Whenever one of your thralls deals physical damage, you can change it to void or spirit damage instead. And finally, level 12 feat, this is Become as Spirit. You can move through unwilling creature spaces as if they were just difficult terrain. You ignore natural difficult terrain and get a +2 to your escape checks. Whenever you destroy a thrall, you gain half resistance to all damage, except Force, Ghost Touch, Spirit, and Vitality, for 1 round. Okay, so it's pretty cool choices for our Grim Fascination. Let's go ahead and talk about our feats, all the level 1 feats, and then a few other feats like I normally do. There's interesting enough stuff at level 1 that I'm not going to cover levels 1 and 2, which is nice to see. Starting off with Death Speaker, this is level 1. Your spells and abilities ignore immunity to mental, emotion, and fear effects, and the mindless trait when you target undead creatures. You also gain +1 circumstance bonus to make a request of or make an impression on an undead. Then we have the Hallowed Dead. Level 1, you aren't unholy. Can't take this if you're unholy. And this has the Holy trait. You and your thrall gain the Holy trait. Their strikes gain the Holy trait and do 1 additional spirit damage, which goes up to 2 at level 10. However, you gain an anathema, creating undead to do undue harm. That is your anathema. You can create them when it's needed, but not otherwise. Then we have Reach of the Dead. This is level 1, a free action, and it is a spell shape, but a free action spell shape, which is cool. If the next action is a ranged spell, choose a thrall within 60 feet, and it comes from this thrall space instead of you. Then the thrall is destroyed. So you can have your spells come through the thrall, which could be really useful for line of sight and things like that. Then we have Undead Familiar. This is level 1. You gain a familiar, but it's undead instead of an animal, making it immune to bleed, death effects, disease, mental, and poison. Your familiar only gets 1 ability a day instead of 2, though, and none can change its type. You can target your familiar with spells and abilities that require targeting thralls, though. Of course, if it's going to destroy it, it still destroys your familiar as well. If you destroy your familiar, you can bring it back at daily prep. So there's that. Then we have the Unholy Dead. This is level 1. You can't be holy, and it has the Unholy trait. Sure, you saw that coming. You and your thralls gain the Unholy trait, and their strikes gain the Unholy trait, and do 1 additional spirit damage, 2 at level 10. You get a different anathema, destroy undead of no harm to you. Can't be doing that. You're cool with undead as long as they're not harming you. And finally, we have Widespread Fascination. You gain access to the Grave spell from a different Grim Fascination. This can be taken more than once, so if you want to, pretty quickly, you can have another focus spell and another focus point. And there are some really good choices. All right, so what are a few higher level feats? Well, let's start off not too high here with Invert Harm. Level 2, you have to have Mastery of Life and Death. So if you're taking, the Necromancer multiclass archetype, you're not going to have access. Casting, your castings of harm can heal living creatures. That's right, your Necromancer can be the party healer. At level 10, we have Blossoming Gore. This gives you the Grave spell, Blossoming Gore. This is 2 actions, has a range of 60 feet. You're going to target a thrall, and it's going to last for a minute, and there's going to be a fort save involved. But first, you're just going to blow up your thrall. It's going to explode, creating a 20-foot burst centered on one of the corners of the square it was in, and it's going to create that 20-foot burst of bloody roses. Creatures that start their turn or enter this area on their turn take 10 persistent bleed damage. If a bleeding creature ends its turn in here, it has to make a fort save. Crit success, nothing happens. Success, drained 1. Fail, drained 1, and a thrall is created adjacent to the edge of the field. Crit fail, drained 2, and 2 thralls are created. On a heightened +1, it adds 2 more persistent bleed damage. You can dismiss this area, though. And finally, Living Graveyard. This is a level 20 feat, and you're going to get the Living Graveyard focus spell here. So this is 1 action, has a range of 120 feet. There's a fortitude save involved here, and it lasts for a minute. You conjure a gargantuan thrall with 400 hit points and a movement speed of 60 feet. All creatures in 10 feet, when you summon it, must succeed at a fortitude save or fall prone. Whenever it strides, 5 thralls, the basic kind, fall from this onto spaces along the path it took. And of course, they last for a minute. All the strikes that the Living Graveyard makes have reach of 15 feet. And when you use Thrall Charge on this Thrall and command it, you take your basic damage, you add the normal damage, and then you add 3d6 on top of even that. So you can hit real hard with this massive Thrall. Okay, so that's our feats. What's up next? We have our class breakdown graph. The Necromancer is a full caster, granted, sure, with only 2 spell slots per rank, but starting with 2 focus points, thus giving it plenty of tactical options off the bat. But this class even has more versatility thanks to the fact that you can go either full cast or you can really lean into the Gish side of things. So you've got all sorts of options out the gate, which means you can build in all kinds of way. And even when you're on the combat, and even when you're in combat, you're going to have a ton of options between bringing up thralls and using them for various things, between spell casting, possibly gish options. This is so versatile. This has animus feels to me, and this is an easy 5. Having said that, your ability to be a Gish is still mired in a slow weapon training progression like we expect with most Gishes, so not really a problem here, but it is true. Most of the focus spells are not single target damage related, and you aren't a cult caster, so single target damage really isn't your strength. But when you put the pieces together, if you choose to focus on it, you can do alright. I think it's just a 3, but honestly, for a full caster, that's pretty good. As for AoE damage, the occult list isn't the best for AoE spells either. They exist, but are nothing like what you get from arcane and primal lists. What we do get that helps buff this up, though, is 1, your innate ability to change void damage into vitality damage that does help with your AoE against creatures that might be hard to hurt otherwise, especially with the occult list, and some nice AoE focus spells that you can take. Yes, we talked about the level 1s, there's other focus spells, but even right away at level 1, you get one by default, and there's another one for one of the Grim Fascinations. Does that put Necromancers to the level of Sorcerers? I really didn't think so. And then the multitude of AoE damage focus spells really does a lot of work to boost it up. That plus the fact that we can just really position ourselves well to set these kinds of things up, and we don't even have to use our spell slots on a lot of our AoE damage. Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 5. Maybe I'm being too generous because it's new. Let's go with it. I'm gonna go with 5. You could argue me down to 4 though. Support though is not the greatest strength. Certainly not of the occult list, and not really of the necromancer. It's still fine. We still have support going on here, and of course you can, like I showed, turn harm into a heal spell. But we're not in cleric or druid territory. We're not amazing at it, but we still have plenty to do in the support category, so it's going to get a 3. Then we have control. Now this is absolutely a strength of the occult spell list, and necromancer focus spells as well. Not all of them, of course, but we do get some really great ones on here. The occult list does lack a lot of environment control spells, like the arcane and primal list might have, but the necromancer focus spells give us a lot of battlefield control to complement the occult's creature control lists. Because we have both parts that come together really nicely, again, this is a 5 for me. You can do amazing control with this class. Keep in mind that your ability to control undead is honestly just out of this world if you want to be. If you want to be the ultimate undead controller, nobody can touch you. And finally, we have survivability, which is normally the great downfall of the caster. We already start off positive here with 8 hit points per level, like we see with some casters, like druids and animists, stuff like that, and access to some armor training, even if it's just light by default, but there's the medium if you want to go the Gish style. Then the really interesting stuff happens. We have a lot of focus spells early and late game that apply buffs to our survivability in some way. On top of that, some of the feats that grant us abilities to use thralls to regain hit points or stop us from being dropped to 0. We have a very sturdy class coming together. Outdoing some marshals, even. No, you're not like a guardian or a champion or something like that, but this is actually a really hard character to kill. So I'm actually going to give it a 4. Now, you have to build for it a little bit, but you can be very solid. Necromancer builds can have a lot of variety in my mind. Yes, you are a caster first, but even the subclasses direct us toward different potential builds. We have your straight up higher hit point caster, ranged, knowledge based character, high int, good con, and then have some dex and wisdom in there. Probably dropping charisma and strength. You don't necessarily need those. You could switch charisma or wisdom in almost any of these lists, though. This helps you just keep your distance, keep casting up, keep you healthy. You can take little hits and get your health back depending on what you're doing. So I think you can keep that up pretty well. Then you've got your melee Gish style, which it tries to lean you toward. I would go with, high int with a nice high strength. Because you have medium armor at this point, you can take con and dex after that, still get a good AC, drop wisdom and charisma because you're out there hitting things hard. If you want more of a ranged Gish option, not really designed too much for that, but I think you can by just taking dex in there instead of strength, and then taking con with either charisma or wisdom here. I tend to like charisma, but I think you can go either way. And you can go the full mental if you want to. Just boost int and either wisdom or charisma. Again, I like charisma for things like intimidation. And then put dex and con in there just to keep you, survivable, dropping the other two. I think you can go a full mental build if you want and still be very solid. There are many, many good ways to start with a level 1 build, but I'm going to go ahead and choose a caster style using Bone as my subclass and Puppeteer. So, level 1 build, don't need any weapons. We're just going to have some leather armor, nothing special. High int, add some dex after that if we want to. I'm going to go with a more dex defensive build, so trying to show off a fifth one here, with con after that and charisma. Don't need strength. Wisdom could be a charisma swap out. Then we have Puppeteer, like I said. So when we create thralls, we create one more thrall, and we get a focus point back. If we're out of focus points and we want to destroy a thrall to get one back, which is cool, once per day, of course. Then we have our spells. When we look at our cantrips, I'm thinking things like shield, guidance, figment, light, and phase bolt. This just, you know, switch out phase bolt for any damaging cantrip you like. I just threw one out there that I like. But the other one's nice defensive, guidance to help your allies. Figment's just good to have. I think it's a really interesting tool. And then light, of course, for any dark vision lacking. And as far as your preparation for your first rank spell here, I like to always have fear on hand. You could use anything, including harm you could just have here. I probably wouldn't use harm. It's not the best spell by default, but I think fear is a good choice. Then our focus spell we get is Bone Spear, so this is our line damage. And our Thrall enhancement here, the Thralls have 5 feet movement speed increase. So with that build in mind, let's go ahead and dive in here and give a combat example of Necromancer gameplay. The town of Fairhaven has been taken over by a crime lord. He had turned the place into a gambling town and front for his operations. The necromancer, Vilmena, and her servant Cal had decided to pay it a visit in the hopes of tearing down the criminal empire or simply taking it over for themselves. As they made their way toward the saloon, they were intercepted by 3 goons, 2 on the street and 1 with a gun in hand on the roof behind them. The goons initiate combat, just as the necromancer had hoped. All roll for initiative. Cal the monk goes first. Entering Dragon Stance, he rushes the nearest goon. Using Flurry of Blows, he lands 1 strike for 9 damage, breaking the goon's jaw. Luckily, Vamena is up next. She uses her focus cantrip Create Thrall and raises an undead thrall next to the severely beaten man while creating a second next to his partner. Because she raised fewer thralls, she can command one of them for free, so she has the one nearest the hurt thug strike it for 1d6 damage, dealing 2 slashing damage. With her next 2 actions, she uses her focus spell, Bone Spear. This creates a line of damage, attacking both goons in this case, as they were close enough together. Both make basic reflex saves. The nearest succeeds, but still takes half damage for 3, while the other takes the full 6. This drops the nearest thug, but the other remains ready to fight, brass knuckles lifted. The injured thug rushes the monk. He strikes once, hitting and dealing 6 damage, then attempts to grapple Cal. This succeeds, and Cal is now grabbed. The mook on the roof now takes a shot at Vilmena. It is a solid hit for 7 damage. Vilmena isn't thrilled. The mook reloads and fires a second time, missing this second shot. When it comes back to Cal, he quickly decides to use the situation to his advantage, and immediately uses Flurry of Blows. The hits land, and the grappling thug hits the ground unconscious. The monk then rushes to the building and uses his final action to make an athletics check to climb, but fails. Vilmena, taking stock of the situation, uses Create Thrall to create 2 thralls on either side of the sharpshooter on the roof. For free, she then has 1 strike. The sharpshooter is flanked, and the thrall hits for 4 damage. Vilmena then takes cover and casts Guidance on her ally. The sharpshooter on the roof now moves away from the thralls best he can, reloads, and takes a shot at Vilmena. Thanks to the cover she took, it's a miss. This gives Cal the time he needs to get onto the roof, get to the sharpshooter, and push him off the roof. He lands prone, taking 7 damage. Vilmena wastes no time. She creates 2 new thralls, 1 attacks for 2 damage, then she uses her final focus point and for 2 actions casts Necrotic Bomb. As the body explodes, the sharpshooter fails its fort save, takes 11 damage as bones shred his prone form. Cal jumps down, and the two head toward the saloon. Being an int caster, there are just a bevy of options for archetyping with a multi-class archetype. You could always boost your casting further, taking additional schools by taking the witch or the wizard, or probably not the psychic because you'd be the same school, but witch or wizard, good choices there. If you want to lean into that Gish direction, there are some really interesting options. You could go with a near martial route and pick up something like the Alchemist for amazing crafting, or Inventor for a little weapon and armor boost here. Or of course, you could always just go Exemplar and take an icon because icons are kind of broken. I personally think it might be interesting to grab the Magus though. It lines up with your intelligence and whichever weapon attribute you want to use. You get a different way to get value from your spells, and you can grab some arcane spells to boot. In any case, the frame here gives you just a ton to work with. And that's the class. Honestly, I thought I was going to talk about the Runesmith first because that was what I liked more out of the playtest, and then this just hit so hard with the full version. I had to talk about it. At first, playtest Necromancer, I didn't feel like felt right. It didn't hit the vibe for me. The real version absolutely knocks it out of the park. I love this. I think you'll have a great time just raising dead, blowing stuff up, throwing bones around. Try it out for yourself, and if you do, let me know how it feels. But until you do, check out the rest of the videos about this book, mine and others. There's going to be a ton of stuff coming out. It'll all be worth a watch, I promise. And as always, adventure on.